What's going on YouTube? rdapdan here. Hope you guys are having an amazing week. It is Wednesday, hump day, and we have our first time interviewing somebody that has a lot of information regarding people releasing from prison, helping passing policies of people that are in prison, but has not actually been to prison themselves, which is completely interesting and blows my mind. So I'd like to welcome John Odermatt. How are you doing today, John?
Doing fantastic, Dan. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to come on your show.
Absolutely.
And very happy to be here.
John is the host of, he's the host and creator, guys, of a podcast and a website called lionsofliberty.com. And they've got a couple of different podcasts on there that John's going to explain, but he's got one on there specifically for felons. And what is it called, John? It's called Felony Friday?
It's called Felony Friday. Yeah, we publish a new episode every single Friday. And just the short elevator pitch of it is we're trying to shine a light on the broken criminal justice system, and we bring on former felons, and hopefully we'll talk about some of those stories later on today. We talk to law enforcement, talk to people working in the criminal justice system, talk to activists, talk to people. We talk to a DNA analyst, talk to professors, authors, so all kinds of people who share the same passion of reforming our criminal justice system.
Well, I got to tell you, it's amazing because until I got into the system myself, I had no knowledge of what was really going on. And to be honest, I didn't even care. I felt like if it doesn't affect me, why should I put in my time and energy about caring about all these other people that are out there committing crimes, not really understanding how the system really worked. So tell us a little bit, how long have you been running this site and the podcast?
So yeah, the podcast is Lions of Liberty. So if you want to get the Felony Friday podcast on iTunes or Stitcher or Google Play, wherever you find podcasts, it's on the Lions of Liberty podcast feed. There's also two additional shows that we have on there. A Monday show, which is our original show, started by a colleague of mine, one of our co-founders at Lions of Liberty, Mark Clare. And then we have a Wednesday show too, which is called Electric Liberty Land. It's more of a casual show that talks about things happening in the liberty movement and culture and comedy, just a mixed bag. So we started Lions of Liberty back in 2012, I want to say, 2011 maybe. And it started out just as a blog. And it was myself and my co-founders, Brian McWilliams and Mark Clare. We all went to college together, and really, during college growing up, we didn't talk about politics. We didn't talk about, starting a podcast or starting a blog. But around the 2008 election, I think we sort of all had a awakening at the same time. And we started to realize, a lot of things that were wrong with our countries. And I think really what sucked us in probably the most was foreign policy. The criminal justice reform for me came later. But to make a long story short, in 2012, we decided to start this liberty activist website. We all consider ourselves libertarians. And Mark was the first one to start the podcast. And I started Felony Friday it was coming up on 2 years ago. So it was January of 2015. So I'm coming up on episode 100 now. And the reason why I started Felony Friday, if you go back to 2008, the time frame I was talking about, I was living in California. And live in Pittsburgh now, from Pittsburgh originally. I moved around a little bit after college, but living in California, I was living in an environment and working in an environment totally different than anything I'd ever really experienced before. And one of my first jobs at this plant, it was a steel fabricating plant. We were fabricating, there were two different buildings, and we fabricated steel framing for building. And one of my first jobs when they hired me was we needed a lot more workers because there was a high turnover rate, and we were trying to expand, trying to ramp up production. This was right during like the housing boom back before, when was the crash? 2008. This was I think it was 2007 timeframe.
And how many people worked at this company?
At that plant there, I want to say we probably had 50 to 60 people, and then there were plants all across the country. I think they've merged since then. At that time, the company was called Dietrich Metal Framing. think they merged with another metal framing company. But
so this company employed quite a few people.
Absolutely, a lot of people, and I came to find out later what types of people they were when I went to hire. I was asked to help to sort through resumes to hire more people, and my boss puts these stack of resumes on my desk. Doesn't really give me any instructions other than find good candidates, read through them, and pick out some good candidates. So I start going through this stack of resumes, and maybe every other one or every third one, there's somebody saying, do you have a criminal background? Yes. Possession of marijuana, possession of cocaine. Everyone had a criminal background. Not everyone. Almost every other one had a criminal background or a felony on their record. And without knowing anything about the situation there or knowing about the environment there, I thought I was doing the right thing. And coming from my own background, growing up in an area where I wasn't really exposed to that, I instinctively thought I was doing the right thing. And I took out all the resumes that had the criminal background, and I put them in a different pile. And then I sorted through the ones that didn't, narrowed those down, and I took them to the plant manager, and he looked through like 5 or 6 of them, and he looked back at me real confused. He's like, where are all the ones with the criminal background? And I looked at him. I was proud. I thought I did the right thing. I said, I took those all out. I mean, we don't want to hire those people, right? And he looked at me like, no, we have to hire those people. Those are some of our best workers. So I'm like, oh, man. So I went back and went through them again. And anyway, we obviously ended up hiring a bunch of former felons, a bunch of people with criminal backgrounds. And in my time working there, I worked in California for about another year. After that, I got to know a lot of these guys, and it really opened my eyes. I started, it's weird to say, and I think a lot of people in society struggle with the same thing that I was, and there's really nobody talking about it. I just assumed.
Let's talk a little bit about what you were before this, because, now what you went through, and this is why this conversation is so interesting, because you were in the right place at the right time to have your eyes opened to something that many people will never have an opportunity to have their eyes open to. There are so many employers out there that pre-screen the minute they see felony, they automatically go, oh no way, we don't need that kind of trouble around here. And they push these resumes to the side. Now, this wasn't something that you were told to do at your job. This was something that you were predispositioned with as growing up. Like you said, you grew up in a home and an environment. So what was your childhood like? Were you ever around felons, or did you know convicts?
That's a really great question. And no, I didn't. I grew up outside of Pittsburgh in suburbia. And we joked about it growing up because we knew it, that we grew up in a bubble, a place called Mount Lebanon, Pennsylvania. Actually, the same high school that Mark Cuban went to.
Okay.
He was several decades before me, but I mean, it's a great place to grow up as a kid. You could walk. They probably don't let you do this anymore, but in elementary school, they would let you, go out and you could walk and get a slice of pizza and come back, and it was great place to grow up. But we were insulated really from the reality of what the world was around us, and so I was never exposed to that. Going through high school, I didn't see drugs. I might have seen marijuana a couple times, but I didn't see really any cocaine or heroin or anything like that. I don't know if it's still like that today. It could be different, but I wasn't exposed to it. I didn't have any friends that got arrested. I didn't have any family members or older influence in my life who I saw going to prison, so I wasn't exposed to it. And I just thought, I guess pre-programmed, I don't know if it was the schooling system that taught me this, or it was just stuff I picked up going through life, that if people who went to prison were different and we needed to treat them differently. I'm not entirely sure where I picked it up. I think it's worthwhile. I reflect back on that to try to figure out why I thought that, because I think it's important in diagnosing how we change that pre-programming, so people start to look at people coming out of prison as being reformed. And I think it obviously has to do a lot with a little better job that the prison system does reforming people. But I think that's important to understand, why do people feel this way? Why is it so hard for felons when they get out of prison to find a place to live, to find a place to work, to get accepted back into society?
When you guys, okay, so you went through this whole process to where basically you were fortunate enough to have a manager or a supervisor that was like, no, we need to hire these people because they're some of our best workers for various reasons. Some of these guys are just happy to have a job. Some of them need to have a job in order to not be stuck in a halfway house or on a work camp. They're usually being monitored. They're on probation. They're not going to be the person that's getting drunk and high on the weekend. They're looking forward to going to work all day. So you're able to awaken to this. So where in your life did you segue where you were like, hey, I want to actually go out, make a difference, start a website, create a podcast? Because this is definitely a series of events that not the average person would probably do. What has clicked in your life? Has anything personally happened to you going through this life walk that you have to where you've met people to make you want to do what you're doing right now?
Yes, not something that personally happened to me. I never was arrested or spent any time in prison, but after I did move back from California, moved back to Pennsylvania, back to Pittsburgh, I met my wife now, and as I was dating her and we got engaged, her brother got in trouble up in college. He got caught up with an undercover police officer selling him selling this undercover police officer marijuana, and the cop came back so many times in order to arrest him for a felony. So my eyes had already been opened to this in California a little bit, meeting people who had probably had similar things happen to them and seeing them come out on the other side. I was already starting to distrust government as I'd become a libertarian, and I was writing about, we had already started Lions of Liberty at this time. I was writing about foreign policy, monetary policy. I wasn't yet focusing on criminal justice reform, but I knew that there were issues there. I knew there were issues with the war on drugs. I knew it wasn't the right way to solve the problem, to help people who had problems with addiction. So anyway, my brother-in-law gets arrested, and he spends somewhere between a year and 2 years in prison, in a halfway house, and then finally was released to go home. Seeing him go through that, though, and we would write letters back and forth, seeing what he had to deal with just for a marijuana conviction, and the stories that he told us about prison guards going through and destroying his stuff for no reason, the stuff he had to eat in prison, hearing all the different stories. But what really made an impact on me was people who were in the same position as him that he told me about, who their families had written them off, and their families didn't visit them. They didn't give them any support. When they got out of the halfway house, they weren't there they didn't offer to give them a ride to get to a place to work or give them any sort of support. Because this is another aspect of it, because of this pre-programming, especially when it comes to the war on drugs, when it comes to drug convictions, I think a lot of people look at it instinctively that let's just let the system handle it and let this person learn their lesson, and they're not there to support them, and that can have a negative impact and can lead to recidivism if they're not there to support them, because they'll end up associating with other people for support, and falling back into bad habits maybe. So that is what triggered me to start the podcast, and I released my first, actually before the podcast I did start a column. I wrote a weekly column called Felony Fridays. So that event triggered me to start writing that weekly column.
Where was that column posted at?
It was at Lions of Liberty as well.
So you've got this to this point now where you've got this podcast, and you've got over how many episodes? You're coming up on 100 here soon?
Yeah, I think this week will be 97. Yeah. So
is that the one with me? I'm number 97?
I believe so.
Okay. Yeah. And for those of you that I didn't tell, I may have forgot to mention this. I was interviewed yesterday on his Felony Fridays. It won't be out until Friday, so I'll definitely send you guys all a link through our text message service to give you guys notifications. You can go check that out. But I posted in the beginning of this chat also a link to their YouTube channel. They also have a YouTube channel where he uploads all of the audio files from the podcast to YouTube for easy access for a lot of people. So definitely subscribe to their channel as well, because you upload every Felony Friday to YouTube?
Yeah, everyone should be there. And I mean, obviously, if you get podcasts on iTunes or Stitcher or Google Play, you can get them there. But a lot of people, even though there's no video to them, at least yet, talking with Dan, we might try to move to video here soon. It doesn't seem as unrealistic as it once did, hearing Dan talk through it.
He's terrified of video. I'm terrified of the podcast. So maybe we can help each other out a little bit later on there. But
why not?
So now you're at this point. You've got these. You've got this. I mean, it's an amazing thing what you're doing, and you've got quite a following. What's your following base? How many people do you have that are following you on a regular basis right now through your podcast?
For podcast downloads, if you look at YouTube combined with our other sources, we're around per episode 2,000 to 3,000, and we're growing. We have a forum, a Facebook forum, the Lions of Liberty forum, where I think we're coming up on 2,000 members there. And I just started a Felony Friday focused Facebook group called Rights for Felons, and it's a great place if you're interested in criminal justice reform, if you want to talk about it, if you're coming across stories that you want to share with people who have a similar mindset, then I would encourage you to join Rights for Felons. And I'm the admin, so I'll get you in, no problem.
Sorry to throw my dog out there. He's starting to become a pest. So make sure you give me a link. Now I have a link to Felony Friday. I also have a link to Lions of Liberty. I have a link to your YouTube channel. Anything else that you want me to post a link to, make sure you give me those links, and you can even post them in the comments. I know you're watching as people are talking live. Feel free to post anything in there, and I'll make sure that it's in the description of this. So now your podcast, it normally consists of interviews. So you spend a lot of time actually interviewing ex-felons that have released from federal prison. We've got actually a lot of ex-felons that are not ex-felons, but people that are getting ready to go to prison, and seeing the before and after of people, of where their mentality is. Because I would say the average person that's watching us right now that is getting ready to go to prison, they're either getting ready to go or they've got a loved one getting ready to go. The anxiety and the fear of the unknown is really what stirs their minds at night. But we've got people in here right now, like a guy named Billy Gomez. I don't know if you see him in the room there, but Billy Gomez spent a serious amount of time in prison, seen a serious amount of violence and crazy things that I've never experienced. Somebody like him, I would love for him to reach out to you, because these are the type of stories that people need to hear and what really goes on behind these fences. Because it's not every prison is where I went. Where I went, I was able to work out all day, take classes, get in shape, focus on getting released. I wasn't sent for a lengthy amount of time. What type of people have you interviewed, and what are some of the notable? I know you like Michael Santos, Amy Pova. What are some of the stories that you've shared?
Yeah, Michael Santos was one of my first interviews, and just an incredible guy. I know we talked about before that you talk about him a lot on this show, and it's amazing the number of people who I talk to that I get to know in this area. That everyone knows Michael Santos. Everyone knows his story, and it's just such an amazing story, being in prison for 26 years, getting his bachelor's, his master's degree, making money, investing while he's in prison. He wrote multiple books. But that was and that honestly, Michael Santos was another inspiration for me to start Felony Friday. I'm not sure if he still has his podcast, but at the time he had a podcast that I listened to. And hearing the stories of those people, what they'd been through, the injustice a lot of them had suffered, was a big motivation for me to start Felony Friday, to convert that into a podcast. Another guy...
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, another guy that I interviewed recently, really interesting story. So he's a fellow libertarian. I interviewed him, actually, the episode 96 was my second interview with him. I interviewed him back in 2016. One of the first guys I interviewed, former felons, or actually he's not a felon. his story is just bonkers. He had mental illness. This was 17 years ago, so around the year 2000. He was suffering with terrible mental illness. He was hearing voices in his head, and he actually attempted to hijack an airplane. Obviously ended up getting arrested for that. This is Aaron Comey. He's a great guy.
Do you know where he served his time at?
It's probably in the podcast episode. I don't know off the top of my head. But
this sounds like somebody I served time with. I'm gonna have to look this up when we're finished.
Well, he was never convicted of a crime.
Oh.
He was acquitted due to mental illness, but they kept him in prison for 10 years. So,
wow.
But the story gets better from there, because after he got out, this was recently when he got out. I think he got out in maybe 2015. If that sounds right. I think 2015 he got out, and he just ran for New York City mayor on the Libertarian ticket. The election just happened this past Tuesday, and a lot of people were, because I interviewed him again leading up to that, and I advertised the interview a little bit in the New York City area. And there were some commenters who were not too friendly, saying, you vote for this guy who tried to hijack an airplane. That's crazy. But I mean, are we going to believe in reform and people deserve second chances and people can recover from things like that? Which he has. I mean, if you talk to him and spend time with him, he's perfectly sane now. That was a rough period in his life, but I think it's important to bring up, because if myself, maybe 15 years ago, if I heard that story, I would have reacted the same way. So it's hard to, it's hard ice to break to get people to understand that people can change and really, in Aaron's case, be healed. And I think you talked about Amy Pova there. I've had Amy on the show. Just a fantastic story there. Amy, I think she was sentenced to serve 24 years, I believe. And this was before any of the Barack Obama clemency stuff, the push to grant people clemency. She got clemency just basically on her own, just pushing, writing letters. She got all these people in the Senate and in Congress involved, told them her story. She had this sentence. They gave her this sentence because she didn't cooperate. She didn't cooperate with, it was her boyfriend at the time was, I want to say selling cocaine. I can't remember exactly. And she wouldn't cooperate with the investigation and give people up. So they nailed her with that. But she got clemency from Bill Clinton in 2000. And then she went on to form the Can Do Foundation. And I think we have a mutual contact we know there, Malik King, who works with Amy Pova. And I've interviewed Malik as well. Malik doesn't have, like myself, I don't have a criminal background. Malik doesn't have a criminal background. But Malik's story is, I think, incredible too, because he's just poured so much of himself into other people, writing letters, writing poems to people, keeping people motivated, helping them with their clemency paperwork. And he's been a great help to me with my show, with introducing me to so many people who have spent time in prison and have a story to share. Because at the end of the day, that's one of the things I want to do with Felony Friday is give felons, give people who've spent time in the criminal justice system, who've suffered injustice at hands of our broken system, give them the opportunity to share their story. So that story is always going to be there. I mean, it's always going to be out there on the interwebs.
Yeah, and speaking back to Malik, I was in contact with Malik for about a month before I found out he had not been to prison. And it completely spun my mind when I finally asked him, like, hey, where'd you do your time at? And he's like, oh, I've never been to prison. I was like, you're involved so deep and so rooted, because you're right. You see all of the posts for the different acts he's trying to get people to sign off on, different polls. He really is, and Amy Pova with the Can Do Foundation, they really do stay very, very, very involved and do not get really as much notoriety and respect as they probably should. I actually plan on having Malik come on here, and it's a small world. People like you that get involved with this, and it's unfortunate how small it is, because it makes it that much harder to make a dent in helping people when they get released. We were talking about in your show the other day with the Second Chance Act, and how funding has been cut now and halfway house time has been reduced, and they're potentially talking about only giving 30 to 60 days of halfway house. For a guy like me, that doesn't really affect. I got 13 or 11 months halfway house, but if they wouldn't have given me any halfway house, I still would have immediately had resources, family, a place to go. There's guys that get released from prison that have been down for 10, 15 years. Like you said, their families have cut them off, and who knows what went on there. Maybe they've been in trouble so many times that their family was just over it, but the chances of them going back through those gates is very high if they're only going to be given 30 days of halfway house. How much can you really do in 30 days with finding a job, finding housing? It's almost impossible. So we're hoping that gets undone. Where do you see this going? Like, what have you seen an impact from? I mean, I'm not asking you to pat yourself on the back, but I am asking you to go ahead and give yourself a little credit. What difference have you seen what you're doing influence and make a difference to the people that are getting released from prison?
Well, I mean, I think one of the immediate impacts, I mean, I've gotten emails from people who've spent time in prison hearing these stories. They're encouraged by them. They're encouraged hearing about people who've had success after prison, who've gotten out and started businesses and started entrepreneurial ventures. I had a guy on last year named Cas Marte, who, when he got arrested, he had a $2 million business selling drugs. He spent 7 years in prison. While he was in prison, he got in shape, and while he was getting in shape, he figured out, I'm kind of good at this. He lost something like 70 or 80 pounds while he was in prison, and upon his release, he got some help. I forget the name of the company that helped him start his business. There is a company that helps, I should look that up, that helps felons, people with a criminal background who come out to start entrepreneurial ventures. And if they're good ideas, they'll give them seed money. He started a gym called Con Body that he has in New York City now, I believe. So, I mean, I like to think that I've helped to motivate some people, give people some hope that even though a lot of people in society are going to see that felony on their background and not give them a chance, there's still an opportunity to have success. And you do have to overcome more obstacles, without a doubt.
Well, let's talk about that for 1 second. Being you've spoken to so many people that have been successful after prison, if you had to find one thing in common with the people that you've seen, including your brother-in-law, and look, everyone thinks whether you serve a year in prison or you serve 5 years in prison or you serve 10 years in prison, prison is prison. You're away from your family and friends. Your life has been altered. When people overcome that, you can't discredit it because they spent a smaller amount of time. What is the one common denominator that you would say that you've really identified, being you've never been to prison? What are you identifying in these people that have been released where they've been able to persevere and make it work for themselves?
That's an excellent question. And the first thing that popped into my mind was hope. People that, maybe it didn't happen right away when they started their prison sentence, but at some point something happened that gave them hope, that motivated them maybe to start taking some classes, or to start working to get a job in the prison, to volunteer in the library, to start studying their case. I think, and a lot of times it doesn't have to come from faith, a faith, be it Christianity or whatever. That is, that is common. That's something that gives people hope or gives people peace of mind that everything's going to be okay. But people that are able to come to terms with their sentence and really understand that there is hope on the other side, even with a life sentence, really, because I mean, at the end of the day, that you could get clemency. Unfortunately, with our current president, I don't know if that's going to happen now. I don't want to never say never. You never know what can happen, but I think hope is very important.
So along with hope, have you noticed what I've noticed when I've seen guys that are successful? What I've seen now, okay, we all know the prison system's broken. We all know the judicial system in general is broken. But there are still plenty of people that have never been to prison, don't know where the police station is, don't know what the inside of a courtroom looks like, doesn't know what it feels like to have handcuffs on yourself. You've just been fortunate enough to have enough connection to get involved. But being there's so many people out there that have never experienced that, what I also see, in addition to everything that you just stated, is also they stop playing the victim role. At some point, they take accountability and said, okay, did I get sentenced to a period of incarceration for too long? Yes, but I still put myself in that line of fire. And once they identified those thinking errors that allowed them to walk in, because I'm sure there's plenty of times in your life where you're like, yeah, it'd be great to go rob a bank and make a quick, easy, $100,000 or do something shady to make some additional money. But something, more than likely, thinking about the potential consequence stopped you in your tracks and continued you on the path that you were on. Where people like me and so many others didn't fully think it through. We made some really stupid decisions, and it led us into an environment that we never wanted to go into. Do you notice that these guys have really focused on taking accountability for what they've done and stayed focused on not allowing themselves to make those mistakes in the future?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Especially I found with people who've been granted clemency. A lot of people I've talked to who either by Barack Obama or with Amy Pova, with Bill Clinton. And I think the reason for that is because they at one point in time, they didn't think they were going to get out. So they had to come to terms with that. Or they thought maybe they had another 10, 15, 20 years. So they had come to terms with living in prison with their current circumstances. And I think that when you do get clemency, because even when they get it, it's amazing hearing people tell their story of, the moment when they get that call and they go and they find out that they're getting clemency, they're getting out of prison, sometimes with a life sentence, which is just amazing. And yeah, they've come to terms with what they did, and every single person I've talked to who was granted clemency, all of them have jobs. They're working. I mean, it's hard to schedule an interview with some of these guys because
they're working their asses off.
They're working so hard. I gotta, Saturday afternoons I gotta catch them because they're working the entire week. So they don't want to give any slight chance of slipping back into something that would put them back into the system.
Now, you're doing what you're doing right now more as because you're it's not like you're raking in the millions from this. You still have an actual job, and you're still fine. And that's the thing that people need to understand is they're like, well, yeah, of course he's going to get on here and talk about this stuff. He's making money. He's not. I mean, he's if he's breaking even, he's lucky in this type of an industry. The fact that the fact that you're doing something like this for the reasons that you're doing it for, I guarantee you, everybody that's watching us right now and that's going to continue to watch this video later on, 100% respects you. And there's some people in this room that I'd really like you to talk to. We've got Billy Gomez, and I think I told you about a client
Absolutely.
that was he was only looking at 30-something months or 40 months, and this guy worked so hard from the time that he got in trouble to the time that he was sentenced. He put in community service. He involved himself in AA groups. He built a mentor network. He wrote an amazing personal narrative, which is his letter to the judge, and some amazing character references. And he originally went to court months ago for his sentence, and the judge was refusing to sentence him to a period of time, which was completely aggravating the prosecutor because they wanted him to go to prison. The judge said, I need more time to digest what type of sentence should be imposed for this type of person that has already made such a tremendous turnaround, different from what the system is used to seeing. So he went to court, I think it was yesterday, and he ended up getting sentenced to 6 months ankle monitor and 5 years federal probation. And when the judge asked the prosecutor if he had anything to say, the prosecutor was so upset, the prosecutor just made the statement of, I'm just here to watch the show. He is a perfect example of the type of person that doesn't just sit back and let what's going to happen. Now, obviously, you can't control the outcome, but you can definitely influence the outcome. And there's so many people out there right now that are going through this that all they're doing is they're sitting in the dark. They've got their eyes closed. They're putting 100% faith and trust into their attorney, and they're not doing anything proactive to change the potential outcome. These are the type of stories that people need to hear about, because he would be sitting in prison right now if he had not taken the steps that he's taken. And he's not the type of guy that needs to sit in prison to learn what he did was wrong. He would be a great candidate for your show, because these are the type of stories it seems like you're really trying to get out there. So I'll make sure I put you in touch with a couple of people.
Let me ask you a quick question there on that. And I definitely would love to interview him. That's an incredible story. So why do you think it is that some people do understand that they have to take they have to take action at that point in time and reach out to someone like yourself? Is it because they just happen to come across a video?
That's what it is. It's what they come across somebody like me or somebody like you, and they hear something inspiring. Here's the thing: if I told you you could never accomplish something and you've never seen it accomplished, you're going to just believe that barrier exists. But once you see that barrier broken down one time, you now have the vision, and you now have to go, you know what, I can do this. That's why we constantly see records broken, because the barrier is raised, the limits are raised. And when Jay saw that we had another client that received probation, he was like, well, if it happened for him, why can't it happen for me? And the mentality you need to have is, we have all heard it, shoot for the moon or shoot for the stars and whatever. If you land on the moon, great. But I can promise people that if they sit there and do absolutely nothing, the end result is going to be absolutely nothing. And then they want to blame their attorney. They want to say they weren't represented properly. I've got a client right now that called me today. Haven't heard from him in 2 months. We've done everything we could do. He's got his sentence. He called me today and said, hey, a couple of quick questions for you, Dan. What can I bring with me? This and that. And he goes, oh, I forgot to tell you, they came and arrested me again a couple months ago, and I found out I've got this additional charge hanging over my head, and they said that they'll deal with it once I get to prison. I said, whoa. Aren't you going to a camp? And he's self-surrendering on Monday. And he's like, yeah. I was like, no, if you have an open case, you are not going to a camp. Your custody level just changed. And he's like, well, what are you talking about? I was like, you need to get on the phone with your attorney right now. He called his attorney, and his attorney says, yeah, that makes sense. This guy is due to self-surrender on Monday. So now it's like these little things that you assume the system is taking care of for you. They're just not. This is going to disqualify him from good time. This is going to disqualify him from halfway house. This would disqualify him from RDAP, and it disqualifies him from going to a camp because of an open detainer. That could be taken care of before he enters into the system. These are things people just don't know or look for, John. And when they come across somebody like you or me or Michael Santos or the few others out there, Malik's and Amy's, it gives them hope and direction of where they can start their path. Because release from prison, successful release, integrating back into society, starts right now. Some people aren't fortunate. Some people are sitting in county jail waiting to get sentenced. If you're out on pretrial and you have the ability to see things like this can be the catalyst that completely shifts your direction and can change your entire life for the rest of your life. So that's why I'm so amazed to see somebody like yourself that has this vision that hasn't been in the system, because it's almost like you have been to prison. You've heard stories. You can imagine what prison's like. If you found out tomorrow you were going to prison, you wouldn't be terrified. It would suck. You'd miss your family. You wouldn't want to kiss your baby goodbye. But you wouldn't be the end of the world for you, because you have a clear understanding of what you can do to mitigate certain circumstances. That's how people make these changes. Jay was one of those people that had no idea what to do. He was a mess. He wasn't sleeping, wasn't doing anything, and literally had to shake him up to get him going in the right direction, force him to do these things until it became habit. And that's how we see the positive results. It's not us. It's not me. It's not you. It's me or you putting some information out there and hoping somebody's going to pick it up and do the right thing with it.
That's awesome. It's amazing that there's not more people doing what you do as a consultant. And maybe there are more people doing what you do, but doing it in the ethical way that you are, I guess is the right way to put it.
With a shirt and tie, like they come off like an attorney.
It's because there's a demand for it, right? There's a demand where people need help. So it's unfortunate that there's not more people out there offering good help. I mean, it's a shame, really.
Well, we're starting to see more. We're starting to see, like you just did an amazing interview with Holly Coleman, who's also been on my show.
Right.
She's planning on going in the direction of helping people. You know what it is? It's something that if I were to start this as a business, just like if you started what you're doing with the idea of making money, you probably would have quit the minute you started because you would have saw how I can't make money with this. I didn't start this to make money. I do this because I have a passion for doing it. I was just fortunate enough to be in a market that also allowed me to be able to charge a fee for what I do. And the reason why other people aren't doing it is I just think inherently there's a lot of lazy people out there that aren't willing to be proactive and get in front of a camera, get in front of a microphone, or get in front of an audience without knowing what the end result is going to be. There's no guarantee that this is going to continue to make money or make a living. But even if I wasn't making money with this, just like for the first year and a half, I would still continue to do it because, just like you said, I get emails, I get text messages from people that told me that these videos have completely changed their life to the fact where they're no longer thinking about committing suicide. They're able to sleep at night. They're able to explain to their family what's going to come next. There's not that giant gaping wound of I have no idea of what's going to happen. And that alone gives purpose to do something like this. And there's plenty of people out there that will say, why are you doing this? You haven't served enough time. You've only been in prison for 13 months. And my response every time is, John, is, well, why aren't you doing it? If you spent so much time in prison and you see what I'm doing is wrong, why aren't you taking the ball and running with it? I would gladly open this floor to anybody that wants to get involved. And I tell people all the time, I encourage Holly. Is that going to create competition for me? Absolutely. But it's also going to create more information for people that are seeking information. And that needs to be the focus on the goal for everybody doing it.
Absolutely. And, I think you asked me before about, the reasons why I started doing this, why I started the podcast. And after I started it, at first when you start something, you're not sure how long you're going to do it for. I didn't know if I was going to do, I think the average length of time a podcast lasts is probably similar, the average length of time that a YouTube channel lasts. It's like 3 or 4 episodes, something like that. But
it's like
the
a business.
thing it is, it's crazy. So if you go like 10 episodes, you're in like the top 1% of podcasting or doing YouTube videos, because most people quit. But the thing with this topic, with criminal justice reform, with trying to expose all of this injustice here, once you get in 10 episodes or 20 episodes and everything you see, quitting is not an option. You can't quit, because how am I going to sleep at night after hearing all these stories, knowing there's more people out there who want to share their story? There's more, people are getting arrested for crap every single day and spending time in prison that either they shouldn't be spending in prison or more time than they should be. And it's not just that one person. They have a family. It has a mushroom cloud effect. So for me, I guess it's kind of selfish that I'm doing this because of what I've been exposed to, what I've seen. I feel like I have to. I wouldn't be able to sleep at night.
And there's a phrase that I hate when I hear people say. I hear a lot of attorneys say it, and this was a victimless crime. When I hear that, it brings back so many memories, because a victimless crime is completely what happens when you go in front of the judge and you try to make any kind of a stance, or you're saying this is a victimless crime. It's not. You've got your family, your friends, your loved ones. They are victims of your choices. Now, are you getting hammered by the government? Maybe. But the main reason why we see success with our clients, John, and why they do so well at sentencing is because their letters do not look like anybody else's letter that has ever walked in there. Their letters aren't saying, my name's John, this is going to be really hard on my daughter, my wife, I'm the sole provider in the household, this isn't fair for my child for me to go to prison. And the judge's response every time is, well, Mr. Odermatt, you should have thought about that before you decided to do whatever crime that you did. Mm-hmm. When these people take actual accountability and they explain that how this has affected their family, and when their family explains to the judge what John did has completely uprooted our entire life. The choices that John made has completely set on us on a course we never thought we would have to do. This isn't the life I signed up for. However, the way he's explained it to me, the accountability that he's displayed and showed, he's out there doing community service. He's trying to give back. We never ask the judge to go easy on our clients. What we ask is, we ask the judge to, whatever sentence you impose on me, Your Honor, I look forward to using this time in prison to better my situation, to take classes, to cure my addiction. So when I get released from prison, I'm able to identify these thinking errors so I can be the man that I need to be, or be the wife or the woman that I need to be for my family. And the judge never reads letters like that, and it has a completely turning effect. And I've got so many people that will attest to this. And it's an amazing. I wish I would have done it. I don't think I would have gone to prison if I had proper letters. So when I hear people say victimless crime, they need to identify their friends and family as victims, because you were a victim of the person that you were close to. It affected you. I remember hearing you in a podcast. You had to take them from point A to point B. You were sending them money in prison. You were being put out a little bit, even if it didn't affect you and you're happy to do it, it still changed your life and affected you to the point where his choices now affect you. That's that ripple effect that people need to really come to terms with.
Well, I agree with you on absolutely the decisions affecting the people around you, for sure, and accepting that the decision you made, even if the law you believe is unjust, you still made a decision to break that law, and yeah, so that you got to accept that. But I do use the term victimless crime. I actually have a T-shirt that I sell, like this poster, no victim.
I swear no, I didn't see crime, that till just now. but it's a term that people use, and they're not thinking of it in that way. That's what I mean.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. At first, I was going to jump in when you first said it, but then, yeah, I agree with what you said afterwards. But I guess the way that I look at it is, for that specific crime, for example, selling someone an illegal substance, if it's a consensual transaction, there's no victim there. They've agreed to it. There's money exchanged. There's no victim, and the state would say, well, the state's the victim. You're breaking the law, but I'm not buying that. But I do agree with you when people do that, when they exchange illegal substances, even if they think this is an unjust law, and I would agree with them that it is an unjust law, it still is a law, and they have to go into it knowing that they are taking that risk.
Exactly.
When you take that risk, you have to know that you're got to deal with the consequences of that risk. And they decided, for whatever reason, when they were weighing their options, that risk was worth more than not taking it.
Or they didn't weigh their options, and they didn't focus on that risk. That's, you're spot on, man. That's what we tell people. We tell all of our viewers that if you really weigh out the consequences, and you're okay with if the consequence could be going to prison, or the consequence could be getting divorced, or the consequence could be not seeing your kids again for a period of time, then you're making the right decision if you're honestly weighing out those consequences. And I think a lot of us that have been to the prison system, we didn't necessarily weigh out those consequences, because in my situation, I justified where I worked. I didn't think I was doing anything wrong. I knew it was unethical. It felt wrong, but I didn't think any laws were being broken. And I found ways to justify what I was doing. And now the way I think is, man, I won't even, if somebody cuts me off on the road, they can have the road. If somebody gives me the bird, I'm okay with it. If somebody tells me my girlfriend is a waste of space and my kids are the ugliest people they've ever seen, I don't respond, because by responding could create a consequence, fights, getting shot, who knows what could happen. And that's just life, not just prison. That's what people walk through with their day-to-day life. We grow up a certain way. We're raised a certain way. We have certain cognitive skills. We're just developed. And untraining that and retraining in a different direction, re-education, is really hard for a lot of people to swallow that pill. That's why I think with what you're doing is you re-educated yourself. Like, you do a lot of the stuff that RDAP teaches people that have nowhere to start. You've completely re-educated yourself to understand that just because people went to prison doesn't mean they need to be condemned. And all it took was your boss going, hey, where are those applications? And it raised awareness in your mind that wasn't there before, and you've completely taken that and you've moved mountains with it. Your YouTube channel is about the same size as mine, and I bust my ass on this thing, and you've got 1,300 subscribers. I feel like that's unjust, but I think you guys are doing an amazing job, man. And I think before you know it, your name and this company, I mean, you got a great name, you got a great concept, it makes sense. I just think this is going to explode into something that you're putting your time in right now. And I think this is going to have huge payoffs for everybody involved, from you to the listener in the end. We're about running out of time. What are some things that you want to leave our viewers with? Make sure you tell everybody how they can reach you, how they can contact you, and then we'll also update the description of this video so everybody can get a hold of you on the methods necessary.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do just want to say thank you for that. I really appreciate that. But also remember, don't feel bad. There's 3 of us, just 1 of you. So we do a little bit of an edge, a little bit of we can leverage more. But yeah, to find us, so the podcast is Lions of Liberty. We have a website, lionsofliberty.com. So check that out. We post all of our podcasts there with a little write-up and show notes page. You can find links to different things we talk about on our shows. Felony Friday posts every single Friday, I think at like 2 a.m. Pacific time. We put it up. You can find that on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, wherever you find your podcasts. The Lions of Liberty podcast will be there, and Felony Friday will be in that feed every single Friday. I did actually, for this show, because I knew a lot of people were going to be listening, interested in hearing stories of felons, of their stories overcoming obstacles, finding success after prison. I made a separate page, lionsofliberty.com/felons, which has just my podcast that I've done where felons share their stories. So if you don't want to sort through a long iTunes podcast feed to find these different stories, you can go to that webpage and click on them, read the ones you think you can relate to, you want to hear, and just pick out those to listen to. And I'll just say again, I think I mentioned before, but we do have the 2 Facebook groups. We also have Lions of Liberty Facebook page, obviously, but the 2 Facebook groups, the Lions of Liberty Forum, the best way to find that is just in the search bar at the top of Facebook. Punch in Lions of Liberty Forum. It'll pop up and you can join that. And we talk about everything there, from criminal justice reform to foreign policy, all kinds of different stuff. And then the criminal justice focused Facebook group is Rights for Felons. And you can find that on Facebook. Just put Rights for Felons in the search bar at the top, and we'll get you in right away.
That's amazing, and I'm so impressed with what you guys are doing. I think I'm going to take these links that you gave us, and I'm going to permanently place them on all of our YouTube channels, past and going forward. Because
That's
awesome. Videos. Because we like to give out resources, and you guys are an honest to God resource for thousands of people that need this information. That maybe somebody doesn't know how to find the podcast, but they're here watching the YouTube channel. So we are definitely going to do what we can to spread the word for getting out there. John, it was a blessing having you come on here. I can't thank you enough. I think what you guys are doing is amazing, and I know we're going to see a lot of future awesome benefits coming from Lions of Liberty. I hope you'll come back on and join us, and I would love to come back on and do another interview with you guys. Guys, please reach out. Do what you can to support John's channel. They've got some amazing shirts. They've got what is it called? Patreon. They got a Patreon account on there. Or if you guys want to show some support, they're not making money doing this, so every little thing helps, and it all just goes back out into the community. So again, every day, people helping people, one day at a time, community as a method, guys. I love every single one of you. I'm rdapdan, and I will see you guys on, what's today? I'll see you guys on Saturday. All right, guys, have a great night. Have a great week. Peace.